Hey guys, welcome to On the Block, where today we're going to be ranking all 30 NBA teams and where I think they're going to finish in this season. So some of these are going to be a lot easier than others. I think there's some clear-cut ones we can just get out of the way straight off the bat. There's some clear-cut title contenders. I think Clippers are title contenders. I think the 76ers are title contenders, even though that might not be the most popular opinion. There's been a lot of positive signs in the season. Joel Embiid playing at an MVP level. Ben Simmons hasn't been amazing. Tobias Harris has been really good back in Doc Rivers' offense. They've been playing really solidly as a team. Lakers, obvious reasons. LeBron is back at an MVP level. I think he's probably going to win it this year, even if some other people have better stats than him. He's going to win it based on how long he's in the league. It's his 18th season. I think he probably deserves it too. Bucks, I'm going to put in title contenders, but I think they're not quite as good as the other teams I'm going to put in here. I'm going to put the Nets up here because I think the Nets are such an offensive team. You will struggle to outscore them 4 games out of 7 in a 7-game series. It's just, they're going to be an extremely difficult team to beat in a 7-game series, even if their defense isn't up to par. The Celtics are a difficult one. I think they are a top-end playoff team, but I don't think they're a title contender. And that's tough to say, but I think Kemba Walker's taken a step back this year with injuries. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have taken a step up, specifically Jaylen Brown. He's playing unbelievably well this year. But I think they're going to struggle later on in the playoffs, especially without a big man. I should say that about the Clippers and the Nets as well. I think they're going to struggle against all 3 of these teams because they all have dominant big men. Obviously Embiid, Anthony Davis, and Giannis. If they get matched up with any of them, I think they're going to really struggle. The Denver Nuggets are a tricky one, I think, also. I think I'm going to put them in title contenders because I think they have the capability to beat any major team, especially given how well they play on defense and also how much of an offensive firepower Jokic is. And Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray can turn it on at any given time. I think they're a force to be reckoned with, and I think they are definitely better than every team I'm going to put in here. Another controversial one, I think, is going to be the Utah Jazz, where I'm going to put at the very top end of a playoff team. The only reason I put the Jazz and the Nuggets in a very similar category, mainly because I think the Nuggets have a little bit more playoff experience. They've been there the past 2 seasons with basically the same team. Given they lost some key players. They lost Jeremy Grant, who's a major piece for them. But they seem to be doing okay this season. The Jazz are playing phenomenally well. The only thing I think will hold them back in the playoffs is that this current team does not have any huge playoff experience. They got knocked out in the first round, I think it was, again, or maybe the second round when Donovan Mitchell's rookie year. They haven't really done anything major since. Whereas the Denver Nuggets have been to numerous 7-game series over the past 2 seasons. Then let's start from the start. Let's go to the Rockets. I think the Rockets, depending on how their team goes over the next couple of months, could finish it in a play-in spot. So what I think is going to end up happening is Christian Wood went down with an injury a couple of days ago, and I think it's all going to play out based on how he comes back from that injury. He's gone for an MRI. I'm not sure if the results come back from that yet, but if he's out for a long time, I think they will tank. Even though they don't have their pick, I think they're going to end up trading Victor Oladipo, trying to get a pick for this year. But I don't see a scenario if Christian Wood goes down with an injury where they don't trade VO. But we'll see. So basically, if they keep Victor Oladipo and Christian Wood isn't down for that long, they're a playing team. If not, they tank for Cade. I'm going to hope Christian Wood isn't injured for that long, so I'm going to keep him here. The Miami Heat are a very strange one. Before the season, I would have said guaranteed playoff team. Don't think they're quite there at title contender yet. I think last season, not that it was a fluke, but I don't think they could replicate that this season. It was a phenomenal playoff run last season, but I don't think they could replicate it this season. Based on how they're currently performing, given that they've already lost 14 games, I think it's 7-14 they are at the moment, I think they're going to be towards the bottom half of the playoffs. Maybe just above a play-in, but it's very hard to tell at this point in the season. They've been really struggling, but they've had some major injuries as well. Jimmy Butler's missed some games. Tyler Hero's missed some time as well. Avery Bradley's out for another, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. So it's going to be really tough for them. The Hornets are going to be a play-in team. Before the season, another one that was fairly tough to pick. I think they've played phenomenally well. LaMelo Ball has lived up to a lot of the hype. His passing has been phenomenal. He's shooting probably more efficiently than most people would have said to start the season. So I think they're going to end up being a play-in team. And there's no way he gets benched for anyone when Terry Rozier and everyone comes back. There's no way he's being benched again. And if there is, it's shameful. The Toronto Raptors are another strange one. So before the season started, I would have said top end of the playoffs. And I still think they are bottom top end of the playoffs. Lost some key pieces in Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. I didn't think it would affect them as much as it did. And while we're on the topic of Marc Gasol, he really hasn't been performing up to scratch for the Lakers, but I don't think it's going to affect them that much because they have Anthony Davis who can run the five in important positions. So like late game situation in the playoffs, they're probably not going to Marc Gasol anywhere near the court. Unless it's against Joel Embiid, because he seems to dominate him more often than not, except the last time they played. But anyway. So yeah, I think the Raptors will end up toward the top of the playoffs. They are currently at the 7th seed, but the Eastern Conference is really, really close. So they could end up jumping up really quickly in the next couple of weeks. The Orlando Magic, I think they should tank for Cade, but I don't think it's going to happen because they're just too damn stubborn. By the way, if no one gets reference, tank for Cade Cunningham, projected number 1 pick in this year's coming draft. I really think they should tank for Cade, given their injuries they have. Markelle Fultz got out a season-ending injury. Nick Vucevic, get some value out of him, trade him now. There'd be a lot of teams willing to take on someone, a skilled big man like that, given his contract is it's not terrible for his skill level. So I think someone maybe around this region, bottom half of the playoffs, guaranteed playoff team, kind of the top end, could be interested in Nick Vucevic. So next up we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been playing dreadfully to start the season. They're currently 6-16, and they're showing no major signs of improving. Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell have played 4 or 5 games together since the trade. Obviously, that is not ideal for the team. 2 players, they're best friends. They've always wanted to play together, and they just haven't been able to. Karl-Anthony Towns, the guy is the most unlucky player in the entire NBA at the moment. He's had so many family members pass away in the last few months. He's been hit by a car. He's been riddled with injuries. He's had the virus himself. Just terrible. Terribly unfortunate, but the team should absolutely tank. There's no way they could make the play in maybe low-end playoffs as they had a phenomenal run from here to the end of the season. But I just don't see it happening, and I don't see the point. They're not going anywhere anyway. But yeah, I think the main focus, get Karl-Anthony Towns healthy, reset again for next season. The Atlanta Hawks are a strange one. I think they are going to end up actually towards the top end of the playoffs. I think they could be the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference, namely because they've had some major injuries already this season, and they are still the 6th seed. So Chris Dunn's missed time, Gallinari's missed time, Bogdanovic's missed time, Rondo's missed time. So the mainstays in their team have been DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, John Collins, Trae Young, which is very similar to last year. And even Trae Young hasn't been playing at his usual level for a certain part of that. So maybe like 5-6 games in the middle. After Steve Nash made some comments, Trae Young didn't play fantastically. But he's pulled it back now. He's had a couple of major games. I think he did a 40-point game the other evening. So he's doing fantastic. But yeah, I think they're going to end up towards top end of the playoffs. I think when those players start to come back, team starts to get a bit of chemistry, you're going to see them maybe a 5 seed. The Trailblazers are a strange one because they're riddled with injuries. I feel like that's a common theme this year. Almost every team is. But I could see them before the season. I would have absolutely said top end of the playoffs. Not quite title contender. But I think they're going to end up being towards the bottom half of the playoffs, depending how long it takes Nurkic and CJ McCollum to come back. At the moment, there's no timetable for them, so have to see how that progresses. But I think I could see a scenario where they're maybe the 6th seed, maybe 7th seed. The Spurs. I think the Spurs should tank for Cade or for anyone towards the bottom half of that, or the top of that draft class. Evan Mobley, any one of them. It would be somewhat nice for the Spurs to get in their big man out of the draft. They could potentially carry them towards championships, but I don't see it happening. They're consistently too good. They're probably going to be a playoff team or play-in team. Sorry. So I think they should trade DeMar DeRozan. His value is quite high compared to the last couple of seasons. Since the Kawhi Leonard trade, he hasn't looked amazing. Everyone was saying he was overrated when he was in Toronto, even the first season or so in San Antonio. But so far this season, he's looked very, very decent. LaMarcus Aldridge, I think, get the value out of them now while you can, because realistically, you're not going anywhere up towards here anytime soon. So I think tank. You have a decent young core. DeJounte Murray is looking great. Lonnie Walker looks pretty decent. So I think tank, get another young piece, and go from there. The Suns. I had high hopes for the Suns, and they've been reasonably living up to them. DeAndre Ayton is kind of disappointing. He's not playing with the level of aggression you'd want him to for the size he is. He's kind of a typical dominant big man build, and the way his game is styled, you'd think he would play like that, but he really doesn't seem that aggressive on the court. So I could see them. I hope they would end up towards the top end of the playoffs, maybe 5 seed, kind of similar to the Atlanta Hawks. Quite a young team, with a veteran presence in the team as well, in Chris Paul, Rondo on the Hawks. If they keep going how they're going, and maybe get a little bit of improvement from DeAndre Ayton, I could see them being a 5 seed. Potentially bottom half of the playoffs, but I would hope 5 seed. Pelicans are a strange case because they've got a couple of amazing players in Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, a couple of fantastic young pieces, Lonzo Ball, Eric Bledsoe is a solid player. JJ Redick hasn't quite hit his stride this season yet, but they've got some excellent pieces, and they haven't quite played that great this season, namely down to how they're being coached. I think Lonzo Ball hasn't really been utilised to his maximum extent. Bar maybe the last couple of games, he's been quite decent, but he's been played as kind of a spot-up shooter, 3-and-D wing, which is just not his game. He thrives in the fast breaks. And with Zion and Lonzo, I don't see why you wouldn't play that way. But it's Stan Van Gundy. He's typically quite stubborn. So I can see how they'd end up being a play-in team. I would have said bottom half of the playoffs before the season started, but I don't think they're getting higher than maybe the 8th seed. But we'll see. Detroit Pistons, not much to be said. Tank for Cade or anyone towards the bottom of the draft class, because you've no excellent young talent. Killian Hayes has the potential to be excellent, but tank for anyone towards the bottom of that draft class, or the top of the draft class, I suppose. Washington Wizards, unfortunately, tank. So I had high hopes for Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal going into the season. I love watching Russell Westbrook. I think he's emphatic to watch. He's fantastic. He's such explosiveness and energy on the floor. But I don't see a scenario where this team pulls it out and goes into the playoffs and does anything meaningful. So I think they should tank for Cade. I could see a scenario where if Russell Westbrook kind of turns it on, Bradley Beal can't ask any more of the guy. He's playing unbelievably well. I could see a scenario if Russell Westbrook turns up a little bit more. Maybe they get someone on the buyout market. Maybe around the trade deadline, something like that, just to kind of a center. Thomas Bryant's out injured. They signed Alex Len, but I could see them being a playing team, but I think they're going to end up tanking. The Dallas Mavericks are going to be a bottom half of the playoffs. They're not looking fantastic at the moment. Kristaps has been out injured for quite a bit of the season so far. When he came back, he didn't look amazing, but since maybe the last couple of games, he's kind of turned it around a little bit. Luka's playing fantastic as per usual. Josh Richardson hasn't been fantastic. He's been okay, but he hasn't filled the role they really wanted him to fill. They needed probably a little bit more, so they traded Seth Curry for him. They probably wanted a bit more defense, and I thought it'd be a win-win trade for both teams. Seth Curry is playing fantastically well for 76ers, but I thought Josh Richardson would fill more of that kind of defensive void the Mavericks might have been lacking, and a little bit of secondary playmaking, but he hasn't quite done that yet. But if he starts to show up a little more, and maybe Kristaps, I could see them being maybe the 6-7 seed. Before the season started, with no injury to Kristaps, or if he came back looking perfect, shall we say, I would have said 5 seed, maybe 4 seed. The Pacers are going to be somewhere between the 5 and 6 seed. I think they'll be a top of the bottom half of the playoffs, we'll say. And I think they could be maybe, if they were the 5 seed, I think they'll be a nightmare matchup for a lot of the top teams. They've got some excellent players. They've got Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon's playing unbelievably. He's probably going to be an all-star this season. Miles Turner's playing Defensive Player of the Year at a Defensive Player of the Year level in a lot of games, averaging nearly 4 blocks at this point. So I could see a scenario where they creep up to maybe the 4 seed, but probably 5-6 seed. Golden State are going to be in the bottom half of the playoffs. Stephen Curry has the ability to drag most teams up quite a bit, but they're not going to go any higher than maybe the 6th seed if they stay healthy. If they don't stay healthy, I think Steph needs a certain level of player around him because he's quite a small guard. He's going to be doubled on most nights because he is by far and away the best player in that team. And I think he needs a certain players around him that can maybe knock down shots. James Wiseman catch lobs in the pick and roll. But if Draymond stays healthy, James Wiseman comes back pretty soon, that team could definitely be a 6-7 seed. Kind of around that Portland area, I think. The Cavaliers. Cavaliers are definitely should be tanking for Cade, because I don't think they have a young core that they can move forward with that's going to take them anywhere up here. And I think that's what most teams should be looking at. The Orlando Magic are a couple for this. They would always, for the last number of seasons, they were kind of teetering around bottom half of the playoffs, maybe 8 seed. But they're never getting any higher than that. They took a game off Milwaukee twice. They matched up with them the last 2 seasons, took 1 game each time. What does it matter? That's the highlight of your season. But yeah, I think they should definitely end up tanking. The Cavaliers, they don't really have a core that's going to take them much higher than they currently are. Currently sitting at the 9th seed. I think Jared Allen was a great acquisition. I think he lines up with their timeline of Darius Garland, Colin Sexton. But going forward, I don't see it. See it taking very high. I think they need another young piece. Maybe deal Andre Drummond, Kevin Love, and see how you go from there. OKC are surprising people again this season, I would say. Putting up more of a fight than most people thought they would without Chris Paul, Gallinari. They're doing pretty well. Shea's been playing pretty decent. Maybe not taking on the lead role as much as people hoped, but Lou Dort has stepped up, Darius Bazley stepped up. So I think they will end up tanking for Cade when it gets to a certain point. They have so many draft picks. They're in such a fantastic position to go forward. They probably have the best potential of any team currently in the NBA because of how much draft capital they have. The New York Knicks, really surprising team this season, but yes, tank for Cade. Tank for anyone. They have no standout young piece at the moment that I would say is untouchable. RJ hasn't shown enough to be called untouchable, I don't think. He hasn't been fantastic. He hasn't really shown, other than flashes, he hasn't shown anything fantastic in the NBA so far. Shooting isn't fantastic, not that efficient, which is not really, I wouldn't expect it from a young player, but he hasn't shown that he could be a star player in the league. So I think they should tank. They've been playing quite well, but there is no reason for them to push any higher. The Bulls will be a playing team if they don't trade Zach LaVine. If they do trade Zach LaVine, which I think they should, because he's being wasted there. He's got good value. His value is probably, it's not going to get higher than it currently is. He's already put up as many 30-point games this season as he has in his first 4 seasons combined. So I think they will be a playing team if they don't deal Zach LaVine. If they do, they will be down here. but I actually don't see them trading him. So I think they're going to end up here. Then the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies will be bottom half of the playoffs, provided they can stay healthy. Ja Morant is fantastic to watch. Extremely, extremely good player to watch. Their team seems to be clicking quite well. Jaren Jackson Jr., I believe he's currently out, but when they're on the court together, they're phenomenal. Their role players play their roles excellent. They're really, really consistent. So I could see them being bottom half of the playoffs, maybe a play-in team. If things didn't quite work out for them, maybe Ja Morant misses a few games, they lose a couple. But yeah, I could see bottom half of the playoffs. Then the Sacramento Kings are going to be a play-in team. And I think that's as good as they're getting. I don't see them jumping up to a playoff team unless they go on a huge run. I think Tyrese Halliburton's been a really good bright spot for them. I think it's an excellent pick up in the draft at where he was. I think he's could be second or third in Rookie of the Year odds at the moment. But I think a play-in team is as good as they're getting. I do think that if I made this list again, I would not make it the same. Like, I know for a fact if I came back in an hour's time and made this list, I wouldn't make the exact same one I just made. It just doesn't work like that because my opinions will change slightly. I might move. I might say, the Pelicans are going to be bottom half of the playoffs, the Grizzlies might be playing team. But everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I'd be very interested to know if you disagree with me. Let me know what you think. And I will chat to you in the next video.